This is nothing but that sports talk. Welcome to Nothing But That Sports Talk. Yeah, NBA free agency is here, and we got the Olympics to talk about. Here with me is the new special guest, Nick Hamilton. Thank you for stopping by.
Hey man, thanks for having me. What's going on?
Everything's going all right. Just enjoying this Olympics and, of course, the NBA free agency and, of course, pretty much everything sports related going on. I see you've done a lot of sports coverage within the West Coast. Why don't you tell me a little bit about how you got into sports journalism in the first place for the sports entertainment side?
Oh man, got into it with an internship. Man, I went back to school, got an internship with ESPN LA. I was grinding back in the day when I was considered a blogger, which bloggers were like the antichrist of journalists back then. Not as much as they're revered now, and appreciated now. So I was doing that and just working my way up, working for various outlets. So I started my own in like late 2017. Which is is now Nightcast Media, but it was a different name early on. And just build it up from there. Sports, entertainment, pop culture, the two go hand in hand. So that's what I've been on, man. It's been on a mission ever since, man, and I ain't stopping until I get to the top. And I have not reached the pinnacle that I desire to reach. So I'm still gonna be here, and I ain't going nowhere no time soon.
That's the mentality that I've had with my shows for the past 3 years. So I get where you're coming from. Now, once you talk about, well, I know it's currently now Nightcast Media, but how did that whole idea about the whole platform you created came about?
I was at a previous network, and the contract ran out. We just couldn't come to eye on the terms, and so my contract ran out, and I was pretty much left, with a duffel bag, so to speak, and nowhere to go. So I decided, I'm gonna use some of the contacts that I've acquired over the years, and I never want to be in this position again where I don't know where I'm gonna go next and not be able to cover stuff and the things I love to do. So I decided to create my own. That way I can never get rid of me, unless I sell it, to some bigger conglomerate. But I knew I would always have some type of security, and that's what I've done. And also give opportunity to others who are, you trying to utilize the opportunity or get an opportunity to further their career, to be able to have a platform they can, they can go to and be able to flourish their career as well. So that was one of the two focuses I had.
Wow, that's literally,
excuse me,
literally a lot summed up in just 5 or 6 sentences right there.
Yeah, for sure, man. And plus too, man, Black media is important. And a lot of times we get shafted. We don't necessarily get the respect that we should get, even though we've earned that. And I'm not talking about just handing somebody something for the sake of handing it to them, but that we earned it. And more specifically, Black owned media. And that's something I've continued to fight for from day one. And I continue to fight for even now. Just to have not only just economic inclusion, but to be able to have the opportunities that are earned the same way that, the mainstream or the Caucasian, counterparts that you have those afforded those same opportunities. And so it's a fight every day. Every day you come off the porch, you got to put your gloves on and fight for what's right and fight for equality. A lot of times we think of equality, and as we should, when it comes between, men and women, especially Black women, Latino women and women of color. But also too, equality also includes us as Black owned media outlets affording the opportunity to be able to get the story, because we have a voice and we speak to a particular, sector of the country that mainstream don't talk to. And so I always keep that in mind. Also, we tell stories because these are our stories and they need to be told our way. And those are the things that, to me, I want to highlight those emphasis. So, of course, with Nightcast Media, I said the reason why it's Nightcast is because, one, a lot of times Black media are treated like outcasts. When you go in these circles, when you go in these scrums or in these circles, and then two, the other part of it was just the night part was just, hey man, we do our best work, because we feel like we have to do our best work. Um, and so we have to compete a different way. We have to fight to get in the chair, then we have to fight to stay in the chair. Then we have to fight in order to get our voices heard, So there are different reasons why I came up with that concept, but I wanted it to stick. And I also wanted to be able to tell stories from our community and other communities of color that have a story that needs to be told and needs to be heard. So
Yeah, it's very nice. It's really nice you brought that up because we live in a world right now where if us black owned media, we're not good enough to work for ESPN or ABC or Fox covering sports, that we could just create our own and hope that we can cover sports through that. Like, for example, we got the opportunity to cover the WNBA, do our own media platforms. I hear your voice on Los Angeles Sparks, and also doing interviews for the Las Vegas Aces as well, like two West Coast oriented teams. I was like, yeah, this guy seems pretty talented. He knows what he's doing. Then looking at your background, you involved with so many major media outlets prior to starting Nightcast Media. Well, before you name it Nightcast Media. And I see you on special guest on the podcast focusing on the Los Angeles Rams. Like, what was that experience like for you?
it was great, man. It was a blessing. Just the work that I put in over the years, and for them to be able to recognize me and allow me the opportunity to be on there, I'm gonna be me, and I'm gonna do the best job that I can as far as being prepared and doing the research it takes to sound intelligent enough to hold my own on that show. And I got to tell people all the time, I'm not an X's and O's kind of person. I know the game, I can talk about the game, but I'm not an X's and O's detailed type of person. I can talk about the game, but my emphasis is trying to humanize the athletes or the entertainer. So to bring a different perspective, to come up with, phrases that I could utilize, that I talk to, like I talk to people on the street, and be able to connect with them, and to be able to try to bring in a different type of audience where we could connect with a different audience, where that previous to that, they probably didn't connect with that audience. And so I always want to bring something to the table, because I understood that value is key. When you bring something, you got to bring some type of value to the platform or to the table. And then hopefully they leave better than I came on with. So that was very, very important. And shout out to Serena Morales, who's the host. Shout out to Jordan Rodriguez, who does a great job covering the Rams as well, as a reporter. And I learned something too from that experience. It wasn't just it was a fun time, but I also learned too. And I'm always watching stuff. Like, that's the thing with me. Like, I'm always watching. I'm not gonna tell you what I'm watching, but I'm always watching things, how things operate, how things move. Why certain things were said this particular way. I'm always watching and listening. To try to get better for me. And iron sharpen iron. So it was a great opportunity to be on. A great team podcast like the Rambling podcast, and just like you said earlier, covering the Sparks, covering the Aces. We also covered the Phoenix Mercury and the Chicago Sky, and being able to have those opportunities as well. And is again being able to cover like what you do as well. Covering USA basketball. We come up with some crazy times, man, with the Olympics and having to wake up at odd hours of the night. Just to hop on, but it's all worth it in the end, because you have that opportunity. You can say, hey man, I was credentialed. I may not physically be there, but I was still on board. I was still credentialed to be a part of something special, like watching these ladies and the men, strive for gold once again.
Exactly. It's now the transition to USA. Well, they're only like 5% worse than they were in past Olympics. Like, for example, the men's side, they lost a game against France. They lost a couple exhibition games, but at the very least, they did just enough to get to the knockout round. They're going to be going up against Spain. And if you've been watching USA basketball since like the 2008 Redeem team, or even the Dream Team back in the 90s, Spain and USA is going to be an intense matchup, because they're the only team to give them a run for their money. I remember back in 2008 when Kobe and LeBron were teaming up. Yeah, going up against the Gasol brothers, that was extremely intense. Staying up like 4 o'clock in the morning just to watch an intense basketball game. Something that you would not have had to do if you was actually living in those areas.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think when you look at this current team, I think they're still trying to figure each other out. It's been a wacky couple of years. Like when you think about what happened with COVID-19, unfortunately, that threw everything off. I mean, this threw a huge, monkey wrench into everything. And then them extending the Olympics by 1 year to try to hope and see if they can actually pull it off. And I think a lot of guys, if it wasn't for COVID, I think we would have had more guys on the team. I think you might have had maybe not necessarily a LeBron, but you probably would have had an Anthony Davis. You probably would have had a Steph Curry. You probably would have had, a Kyrie Irving. You probably would have had a number of other players that we are not accustomed to having, right now because of people saying, hey, man, I don't want to be a part of it, or, I want to spend more time with my family, which is understandable. But when you talk about the 92 Dream Team and 96 Dream Team 2, you talk about the Redeem Team and the team in 2012, the difference between this year's team and those 4 teams I look at is leadership. Because on those teams, you knew exactly who were the leaders. Obviously you had guys that would do different things. But for example, that Dream Team, it was Michael Jordan, then it was Magic and Larry Bird. On the Redeem Team, you knew it was LeBron and Kobe. Same thing with 2012. You knew it was, LeBron and Kobe, and then sometimes either Chris Paul or whoever. 2016, that was LeBron. Now you kind of question who is really the leader. And I think that's also been, even though they haven't had a lot of time to gel together, the leadership aspect. Who is the leader on this squad? And that's, I think, Kevin Durant can definitely be a leader. I think Draymond Green can definitely be a leader. But who's going to step up and say, no, I'm going to lead this team, right? And I think that's been one of the question marks. They've been rolling, as of late after that loss. But now, as you said, it's going to get tougher because with Spain, with other sizable competition, it's only going to get tougher because you have this huge target on your back as Team USA because we're known for winning the gold medals.
Exactly. The USA has been known to winning most of the games via blowouts. Only coming up with like one close game. And when they do get a close game, most of the time they always ended it by the time we get to halfway through the 4th quarter. This is just one of those things where eventually you're gonna get tougher. It's gonna get tougher and tougher to win gold medal when the players that usually carry the load are not able to play or can't play on the team anymore because either they're closing on retirement or certain other reasons. Like for example, like you don't see LeBron James this year's Olympics. You don't see Bradley Beal was supposed to play the Olympics, but he couldn't because of COVID protocols. Yeah. Right now, like you said, it's just a leadership role that matters. I mean, do you give it to Kevin Durant and Draymond Green? But let's not forget you got Damian Lillard, who also went off for a game against Iran. And you could also throw in, what's his name, Zach LaVine into the leadership role. Oh yeah, there's also the two players to the Milwaukee Bucks championship team, but Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton. Either way, they're all coming together as a team. Some of those teams and duos are used to playing together in their own teams, but they're all not used to playing together outside of Draymond Green and Kevin Durant.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think it's just the leadership aspect of it. I think once there's a definitive leader, and then also too, I look at the coaching staff. I think Greg Popovich is one of the greatest coaches we've seen in NBA basketball. But that doesn't always necessarily translate to the international aspect of it. And I was concerned early on because I said, oh, crap, here we go. This is going to be a repeat of 2004. Because if you recall, who was with the coaching staff on the 2014? Larry Brown and Greg Popovich. Mm-hmm. Now we have Greg Popovich as the head coach. So you can understand myself, and I'm sure many other USA basketball fans concerned about, damn, is this 2004 all over again? Are we going to settle for the bronze medal, maybe get a silver, early on because they didn't look well. Obviously, they were missing players like Devin Booker and Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday. But even still with that, up until the protocol situation with Bradley Beal, you still had a pretty talented roster. So now I'm definitely concerned about this men's team. I've said it from even on my show. I'm concerned about this men's team. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if this men's team, gets a silver medal instead of gold. I'm hoping they get gold, but it wouldn't surprise me if they got the silver medal, just because of the way they've been playing. Um, I'm not as concerned about the women's team. I think the women are going to smash. We've seen a few hiccups on their end too, but I think the women are going to smash. I have a lot more confidence in the women's team than I do the men's team. That's for sure.
And that's understandable. But before we get a little bit more to the women's team, we'll drag on the men's conversation for a little bit because, I mean, we already talked about their tough matchup against Spain. They've been a tough drug on throughout the years. And later in the competition, they might go up against France somewhere later in the tournament, the team that they did lose to. Evan Fournier, Rudy Gobert, you see the way they coexisted with France. Evan Fournier, he's doing what he should have been doing in the NBA. You never see him going out for 29 points against a Kevin Durant and Draymond Green-led team in the NBA games, let alone in the Olympics. And now that that's happened, yeah, that's going to be a lot of concern.
Oh, absolutely. But you got to remember, too, it's FIBA rules. These guys have played with their countrymen, quote unquote, a lot longer. They know what to expect. They know how to play in international competition. And I just think that a lot of teams have caught up with USA basketball. I think a lot of teams over the years, they were tired of getting stomped on outside, not named Spain, because Spain was probably the most competitive team that the USA faced out of all of the teams that were in competition in the Olympics. But I know teams are tired of getting stomped on. That's why, even for example, a team like Nigeria, they got an NBA head coach that that's pretty much preaching defense. And you saw their defense look, pretty well in that game against the USA. Mm-hmm. So with Mike Brown being their head coach, I think a lot of these international teams are starting to realize, okay, look, in order for us to get better, we gotta beat them at their own game. So how do we beat them at their own game? Okay, let's acquire the knowledge from an NBA head coach, for example. Let's take the notes from these players that are already in the NBA that are from our country. What can we learn? There's a scouting report. And I just think that a lot of times these guys communicate back home. They're letting people know, hey, what to expect, what to look forward to, and they're getting better in the process. And I think the USA sometimes may have gotten, complacent to a degree and said, okay, hey, man, we the USA, we're going to walk up in here, we're going to do our thing, and we'll walk away with these medals. And sometimes it may look that simple on paper, but when you start getting into the trenches, it becomes a whole different ball game. And so I think a lot of international play has stepped up in the last maybe 10 years or so, and really now it's coming into fruition. So now we're starting to see evidence of that. And then there are a lot more international players coming to the NBA. We just saw Giannis get his first title. Luka Doncic. There are a lot of players that have come on board. Serge Ibaka. Many years ago. So there are a lot more international play. And players rather coming to the NBA and playing the NBA game. And so as the NBA continues to go global, you're going to see more and more of that. And I think, it's great competition, especially internationally, because I think I think the USA basketball should learn a lesson from this year of how to prepare for the Paris Olympics, as far as how they recruit, who they recruit, and making sure that these guys gel each and every summer that they have off from the NBA, because that's exactly what it's going to take to get back to that point where, the USA was smashing teams by like 40, 50 points. Easy. And that's what it's going to take. If they're going to be that powerhouse like we were accustomed to them doing back in, like we said, the Redeem team in 2012 and 2016, they're going to have to go back to that. They're going to have to go back and really, really be aggressive when it comes to recruiting, certain NBA level players to be a part of the team and really start to focus in and say, hey, do we really want to win a gold medal, or are we just showing up to be showing up and then see what happens? That's what it's going to take for 2024.
Yeah, and then another challenging team now, I forgot to mention earlier, it's Luka Doncic and Slovenia. Luka went for 48 points. Man.
Luka's special.
This guy.
He's special.
he has a lot of great, crazy moments. Just his first 3 or 4 seasons of his NBA career. I mean, come on. If you go up against Arena, the only guy you have to worry about is Luka Doncic. Because if he goes off of that, having one of those 48 points, this man's gonna literally steamroll the USA team because he knows those players very well.
Well, and also too, you got to remember. Again, I think Team USA is getting used to FIBA rules. I wish they would incorporate a few more FIBA rules to the NBA because I also think that would help too. Mm-hmm. I also think that because it's a lot more physicality. And a lot of times, if you do that kind of stuff in the NBA, you're getting a foul. Sometimes a flagrant one, because now things are kind of softened up a little bit. You might catch a flagrant one. And so I think they need to incorporate a couple of more FIBA rules into the NBA just to get accustomed to international play when it's time for it. But Luka going off for 40, 50 points, let him go off. It's the other guys you got to put pressure on. It's like you do in the NBA. One guy goes off, great. But if the other guys can't find a rhythm or they're shooting like 30% from the field, pretty much got the game. And you're shooting in the 40s, you pretty much have the game.
Yeah, that is also true. And that was a mistake that the Brooklyn Nets made when Kevin Durant was basically the only healthy only healthy player on that roster in the final 3 games of that series also against Milwaukee. But you can let him go for 50 or 40, but you got to be mindful that there are other players on the roster that are also capable of scoring, and you got to make sure they don't contribute to what was otherwise a possible performance that is going to be literally memorable for years to come.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And to switch to the women's side, we know how good the women's side is. I mean, yeah, they lost against the team, the WNBA. The WNBA players that didn't make it to the Olympics, and they did lose a game in exhibition, but they know how to gel very well. It's like they never missed a beat. And even with the addition of Angel Wilson, she's been balling out, getting a double-double up until, of course, the win against France. She's had double-doubles in the first 2 games, and we all know the chemistry of Sue Bird and Diana Taurasi when they're playing together at the Olympics. So this women's basketball team knows how to get this 40, 50-win blowouts like it's nothing. Oh, yeah, and not to mention the fact that even though France kind of gave them a tough scare, they learned how to win a close game when it matters the most. And Tina Charles showed you the Tina Charles that we got in early Olympics.
Well, I think, too, here's first of all, A'ja Wilson has taken her moment by storm. This is her moment, and she is definitely displaying who she is on the international scale. And I don't think anybody will forget the name A'ja Wilson anytime soon. Even though she didn't have a double-double in the game against France, she still scored in double figures. There were 4 players that scored in double figures against France. Tina Charles was, especially in that second half, Tina Charles was on fire. She looked like the reincarnation of Reggie Miller. I mean, she was shooting from 3. She shot well. She was confident. And this is probably the most confident I've seen Tina Charles in quite a while. It's just as far as her mid-range, her mid-range game. We know what she can do, near in the post. We know what she can do within 15 feet. But her shooting ability and her confidence on that international stage has been remarkable. A huge credit to the coaching staff, especially head coach Don Staley. We know what Breanna Stewart's going to do. But to me, the key factor, and I spoke with Jewel Lloyd after the France win, and she told me basically just she's learning how to be a better 2-way player. Offense, we know what she can do offensively, but on the defensive side of the ball, most importantly. And it kind of reminded me of the men's team USA, when Carmelo Anthony had to play defense. And nobody believed that Carmelo Anthony could play defense until he started locking people down. And we all had that epiphany, like, damn, this guy really can play defense. And I think people are starting to wake up and realize that Jewel Lloyd can actually play defense and play it pretty well. I know she had about 6 or 7 dimes, but her defense to me really stood out to me. I think that was one of the keys to, stopping France's, going in and out of transition, being able to press her defenders, and being able to really just grow into her own. And that, to me, I think she's going to translate that back to the WNBA when she plays with the Seattle Storm when they get back into their regular season play. And I think it's going to be very, very dangerous for her opponents going up against Drew Lloyd, because now I think she has a confidence. She knows she can do it, and she's proven to herself that she could do it effectively. And I think that's only going to be a great thing for her as she continues to move along in her career.
And not to mention, she's being coached by Don Staley. And we all know the South Carolina connection that they've had in the NCAA tournament several years ago, or 4 years ago. And she talked about how it's the vibe that's really focused on winning the games and getting that gold medal. I mean, let's just say she knows it very well. And this is pretty much the same mentality that you had Cheryl Reeve being an assistant coach, coaching two players for the Minnesota Lynx in Nafisa Collier and Sylvia Fowles. So that chemistry really helps the offense a lot.
Oh, it does. And the one thing I will scream at the TV, I want to see one time. I just want to see it once. I hope Don Staley puts out either Brittany Griner and Tina Charles or Brittany Griner and Sylvia Fowles at the same time. Just put them out there for like 3 or 4 minutes, just to dominate, just to have two dominant bigs out there. I just want to see it because I think that would be fun as hell to watch. They'll go over against, especially those smaller, the smaller opponents like in different countries, but they don't have really like a necessary or big, so they can just dominate. That would be fun to me. I hope Coach Staley does that, but that's just my little fantasy basketball moment.
Yeah, that is also true. Now, getting to the matchup against Australia, if Liz Kimby did not walk away from the Olympics due to mental health reasons, she would have probably given them a run for the money because she knows the WNBA players that made it to the USA team very well, including Asia Wilson. I mean, come on, like right now, I remember all they really have is Rebecca Allen. But I'm not sleeping on Rebecca Allen because if you've seen her during the time playing for New York Liberty, especially when she had those 2 blocks against Los Angeles Sparks, she can be a good defender when she puts her mind into it.
Oh, absolutely. I think she's a very solid defender, sometimes even underestimated at times. But I think the USA women's team is not going to take Australia lightly, even without Liz Cambage. I think they're going to prepare as if Liz is going to play in a sense where you would take this team seriously if she was playing. So you got to take them seriously, though she's not playing. And I think that's the attitude that they have. I think they have to have a strong opening quarter. We didn't see that strong opening quarter against France. They were very sloppy. They allowed France to take the lead, and they had to play from behind. I mean, I think that their best quarters were the second quarter and the fourth quarter. I think those are their 2 best quarters, and that's what got them over the hump. I think when you're playing Australia, you're going to have to come with a strong opening tip, know how to maintain your lead, and be able to know how to space the floor properly against Australia. If they can continue to do that and shoot well from the floor, don't commit turnovers. I saw, especially in the third quarter, they were horrific with turnovers in the third quarter against France. They cannot allow that to happen again because Australia can capitalize and make you pay dearly, especially from the outside. So you want to make sure that you are pretty much, you stay on point like a decimal, and you make sure that you are out there doing things that you need to do as far as playing defense, not letting them get on an open, a long run, 8-0 run, 9-0 run, 10-0 run, that type of deal. You want to get out there and make sure you getting out in transition, moving the ball properly, and being able to knock down a high percentage shot. But I think they need to feed Brittany Griner. That's been my biggest thing. They got to feed Brittany Griner more in the post. Dear God, exactly. She's out there for a reason.
Exactly. One of the fewest in-game dunkers that we see in the WNBA, Brittany Griner, that girl could dunk.
And she can body you in the post. That's the thing. Like she's not trying out there shooting threes. She's like, look, I'm on the block. I'm in the post. I'm within the 15 feet. Let's get it in. And she can, she can rebound. She can answer shots. I mean, that's why she's there. That's why she deserved to be on the team. One of the many reasons why she deserved to be on the team. I'm like, feed her. When you see a mismatch, feed her. Let her go in. Let her go in. Because she's 9 times out of 10, my money is on BG all day long, especially in a mismatch. Worst case scenario, she gets to the foul line.
Yeah, that is something you need to avoid because, but we mentioned, like you mentioned, some of the stuff you just said, Australia is not a team to sleep on. They're really not. Because if you can struggle to get a win against France, and then of course the two L's I just mentioned earlier. Oh yeah, there's also that loss against Oregon that happened a couple of years ago in college. Then, well, how you think you're gonna have a time when you're going up against Australia and later opponents in the tournaments?
Well, I think too. I think the thing about Coach Staley is that she does do a lot of adjustments, and I think she pays attention to film, especially attention to detail. I think she has a really good coaching staff. You mentioned Cheryl Reeves and others that are on that coaching staff. So I think they really pay attention. I think they take it game by game, which is very smart. And they'll be able to make proper adjustments as they move along. The one thing I will say about this women's team is that they don't take any game as a gimme game. They're fighting. They're out there fighting each and every game. The one thing that concerns me moving forward is the health of Diana Taurasi. We saw she had a bit of a wrist, it seemed like a wrist injury or some type of hand injury. I mean, she did return to the game, but it wasn't the same Diana Taurasi that we were accustomed to. So that's one thing I noticed, that we need to continue to pay attention and monitor the health of Diana Taurasi, because when Taurasi's out there, that team is a pretty different team. But to me, it seems like even when Diana's not out there, they don't really too much miss a beat. I mean, you have Asia Wilson out there. Chelsea Gray comes in for a spell. So they have a nice rotation. I like to see more Skylar Diggins out there, and hopefully she's healthy enough to compete. I know Coach Staley said the other night that she had returned to practice. I know when I asked her, she wasn't really trying to talk about her state of her health.
That wasn't really me. That was actually B. Terrell, or should I say Brennan Terrell, if you want to call him by his government name. She asked the question. She didn't want to talk about it.
That was me.
Oh,
I asked her about her health. No. I asked her about her health. She's like, I'm fine, thank you.
Yeah.
It was like, move on. It's like, move on.
How you feel when
that was me.
Oh yeah, how would you feel when she told you that she didn't feel the need to discuss mental health with you? Like, come on.
I didn't care. I mean, I don't. I asked. See, I'm not one of these. First of all, I don't wear my feelings on my sleeves. So, I don't know. I don't take it as personal. I think these athletes have a right to answer how they want to answer. She wasn't disrespectful when she answered. She was very short and to the point. So I found it kind of funny, because it was like, she was kind of snarky. So I found it funny. I was like, okay, that's how you feel? All right, let me move on to my next question. And I went on to the next question. I don't, I know when you deal with athletes long enough, you can understand people's temperaments. You understand people's, personalities and what have you. So you don't take it personally, because it's not directed at you. You just happen to ask a question, and you just catch the brunt of how they feel it that day. But I don't ever take it personal, as long as it doesn't get disrespectful, which she was not disrespectful at all. Exactly. She was just very short and to the point.
Yeah, exactly. Skylar Diggins knows how to get short to the point when she feels she doesn't really feel to answer questions. I remember one time somebody interviewed her about her homecoming to Chicago Sky, and she said, "Next question." But all you can do is just move on and brush it off, because don't feel comfortable answering it, then, or even if they give an answer, it's not really what you kind of expect to get as a journalist, regardless of whether you're coming in for your own media content or you're covering it for ESPN. Then I see a lot of athletes to show how they really feel about the questions they're being asked, like Chris Paul, David Booker getting annoyed when somebody asks him a question, or JaVale McGee getting annoyed when somebody asks him whether or not his mother's alive. Like, come on.
But here's the thing, though. Let me be clear, Rafiq. Stupid questions deserve whatever responses you get. And the people that you mentioned with Devin Booker and Chris Paul and that question, that was the dumbest damn question I heard. JaVale McGee, another dumb, insensitive question. Because all you have to do is do research to know if his mother is still alive or not. You know what I mean? And it's a certain way, even if she was not alive per se, let's say as an example, there's a way you can still ask the question respectfully where that person will still want to talk about it, because his mom was a great basketball player, right? Mm-hmm. I asked Paul George a question and he got mad, right? And I had no idea, right? I'm at it's an away game. right? It's an away. It's the Clippers against the Suns during the regular season. It's an away game. I'm watching on TV like everybody else because I don't necessarily travel with the team like that, but I will report. And at that time we were still on Zoom, so you can get the post game on Zoom. So I'm watching. I have to cover that, and then there's a Kings and Ducks game in the NHL that I also have to cover. So I'm kind of doing two things at once. So as soon as the Kings, the Suns Clippers game is over, I switch the channel and go back to the Kings Ducks.
Mm-hmm.
So I have no idea there's alleged beef between CP3 and Paul George. I'm thinking everything is kosher. So I just happened to ask him and say, what do you feel about Chris Paul and what he's meant to the game of basketball, specifically the NBA, and what he's contributed to the culture of it? And he just looks up like, next question.
Yeah.
What's wrong with you?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, but understandable at the same time because they have their preference in the type of questions they're being asked. I mean, it's just...
it's fun. I mean, I respect Paul George as a player. And I didn't do anything. I would never I don't believe in this TMZ type of reporting where you're trying to bait some player or bait some, entertainer into saying something so you get a quick soundbite out of them. If I'm going to ask you a question, it's because I'm asking a legitimate question and I'm trying to get a story. I'm not here to bait anybody. I'm not here to degrade anybody. I'm not here to cause a beef between, people. Now, obviously, I'm not going to ask Paul George about Devin Booker and vice versa because I know those two have had words, in the past. So I'm not going to even mention to either one about each other. That's just dumb, especially when because again, that's just antagonizing the situation, right? But if you're asking a legitimate question, hey, if you don't want to answer, it's fine. But don't get mad when I write what I write or what I report. Don't get mad because we gave you ample opportunity to tell your side or to have, for us to use your words instead of us, trying to put two and two together. That's it.
Yeah, and to conclude this conversation, I remember during when the Aces lost game one of the finals against the Seattle Storm, and I asked Agent McCarthy, so obviously you're now 0-4 against Sue Bird, and she's like, yeah, gee, thanks, Rafiq. And then I was like, what do you think your team's gonna have to do in order to finally get a win against her? And then after she gave her answer, she was like, what type of player would I be if I come into a game, be like, oh, I'm 0-4 against Sue Bird? Who does that? I like some questions like that. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, you gotta. I mean, like I said, it's just understanding the personalities. And I love Angel McCoughtry. I think I covered Angel when she was a member of the Atlanta Dream, and she's a cool person, man. Like when this was during the times we could go in the locker room and stuff before COVID, so you got a chance to really understand the players and stuff. And it was funny because she was trying to be sarcastic with me, so I got sarcastic right back. And when I did that, we were cool. And then I understood, okay, that's how she expresses herself, right? And so we were cool ever since. You know what I mean? And every time I would see when she come to LA to play the Sparks, I see her, hey, what's up, Angel? Yada, yada, yada. Like, what's up with this? You know what I mean? Or just casual conversation. And she was cool. That gave me an opportunity to understand who she is. Same thing with Diana Taurasi. Like, I got cool with Diana Taurasi. And understanding her personality. So every player is different. That's the thing about it. Like, you got to understand players' personalities, and it's a science to it. But we do our best as reporters to try to figure those things out and get our questions answered and get the stories out and move on to the next.
That is also a fact. Now, transitioning to another topic, we got the NBA free agency coming up. Of course, the Los Angeles Lakers, they started off right off the bat when they picked up Russell Westbrook during draft night. How effective will Russell Westbrook be for the Los Angeles Lakers, considering they got beat by the Phoenix Suns in the first round? LeBron finally lost in the first round. I know, is it disappointing that LeBron finally lost in the first round? And the Russell Westbrook question, let's be honest.
Well, to answer your first question about Russell Westbrook, I think Russell brings a different type of energy to the team. As one of my colleagues told me, this season is going to be spicy for us in the media because how Russell likes to talk to the media. So that's going to be fun in itself. But I also think, it makes LeBron a little bit more of a shooter now that you have a Russell Westbrook who can bring it up. And one thing about Russell, he's a talented guard, but he gives energy night in and night out. He doesn't stop. He continues. He's like the Energizer Bunny. He's absolutely fun to watch. I think it's going to be electric at Staples Center. I think it's going to be electric when Lawrence Taylor, the PA announcer for the Lakers, is going to announce his name for the first time as a Laker in front of the home, in front of the home turf, as it were. I think it's going to be a fun regular season. But it's all contingent upon the health of Anthony Davis. I've said that time and time again. Anthony Davis, for this to work, he's got to be healthy. He's got to play at least 68 to 70 games this year. He's got to be on the floor. If he's not on the floor for about 68 to 70 games, if they play an 82 game season, mind you, it's going to be a problem and it's going to be a struggle. I think for the playoffs, that's where it gets dicey because Russell's style of ball I don't believe is championship worthy. That could change, but going off the previous years that we watched Russell, hasn't translated into a championship.
Exactly.
So I don't know. I think LeBron is a year older. So Father Time is undefeated. I still think he's a great player. He's one of the great players of our game. But again, it's about who the Lakers fill out with their roster. Are they going to have the grumpy old men, or are they going to fill it out with some shooters? Because I believe LeBron needs shooters and defenders, 3-and-D guys that can really get up and down the floor. If they can do that, then, yeah, the Lakers could have a clear-cut path to at least the Western Conference Finals, if not the NBA Finals. But they've got to get through the gauntlet known as the Western Conference because other teams are going to be better. You got to look at what the Utah Jazz are going to do if they can get a wing player. What are the Denver Nuggets going to do now that Jamal Murray is going to return back? The Joker is coming off an MVP type of season. So there's a lot of factors involved. What do the Clippers do? Obviously, Kawhi is going to be out for the next year. Maybe he may come back maybe sometime in March, the latter part of the second half. But let's just say the majority of the season he's going to be done, because he's going to be rehabbing that knee. So what do the Clippers need to do? I hope they re-sign Reggie Jackson because Reggie Jackson's a great presence in that locker room and he's great on that team. I'm not high on Pat Beverly. I'm not high on Zubac. So it'd be interesting to see what they do with those players. But I think the Lakers are definitely the team to beat unless Golden State makes a major move.
That is exactly a good point. And also, we can't ignore Terrence Mann. This guy, when Kawhi Leonard was out for an injury, Terrence Mann was a man. The guy can shoot from all angles of the court. He can shoot from the baseline. He can shoot from the top of the key. He even takes it to the hole and gets down. Like, watching this man score in Game 6 of the conference semifinals, all I'm thinking is, where did this guy come from?
Let me tell you something. We watched Terrence Mann for 2 years. This man, he's a bad man. We talk about Aaron Rodgers being a bad man. This is a bad man right here. He is an absolute stud. This kid has definitely worked his tail off to get to where he is. He puts in the work. Very, high basketball IQ. Listens. I mean, he's worked out with Paul George in the offseason. Getting him right, getting him in the right condition. So you see it paying off, and he's only gonna get better.
Yeah, he actually will, and especially with Kawhi Leonard. Well, even though he got declined of his player option, he's going to come back, but it's not going to be the way it was used to. Which means Terrence Mann is going to have to be the Terrence Mann that we saw throughout the playoffs. Oh yeah, and not to mention up until of course that crazy out of you dunk by DeAndre Ayton, which literally paved the way for the Phoenix Suns getting to the finals. And you got to admit that was a pretty impressive finals run they made. Of course, they blow a 2-game lead to Milwaukee, but what you expect? Giannis, he was bound to get a championship eventually. So it's not like it's if you lost the jumps. You just lost to a team that was better. Forget the seeding. Forget what you heard about the Brooklyn Nets. The fact that you only got through the Brooklyn Nets because they weren't healthy. Giannis was bound to get a championship. He was motivated by his younger brother who got one play for the Lakers.
Well, I always say Giannis is the luckiest champion I've seen. And I still stand. A lot of people A lot of people get mad at me. You might get mad at me about it, but I'm still call it.
Listen,
he's lucky. I mean, he's a lucky champion. Period. Because I mean, listen, he took advantage. He took full advantage of the injuries. He was the one. And we didn't think Giannis was going to come back after that injury he suffered against the Atlanta Hawks in that series. We thought pretty much Giannis was going to be done. It kind of reminded us of a Kevin Durant situation that year when he played with the Warriors. We didn't know when Kevin was going to come back. That type of deal when they played against the Toronto Raptors. Mm-hmm. It kind of reminded me of that situation. I'm like, oh man, if they have that, dude, that sucks. You know, because you never want to see a player go down. You always want to see guys at their full strength, you know, compete at the highest level. So it was good to see that Giannis was able to bounce back from that. Man dropped a 50-piece in Game 6. But again, he's the luckiest champion I've seen in a long time because, again, this is a team that if you had a healthy Brooklyn Nets team, we wouldn't be talking about the Milwaukee Bucks. Hell, Kevin Durant by himself took them to a 7th game in overtime. Kevin Durant.
Rucker Park, Kevin Durant.
No James Harden, because even though James was on the floor, he wasn't really effective. No Kyrie Irving. Spencer Dinwiddie was out for the year. So it was Kevin Durant.
Rucker Park, Kevin Durant. That gave me that
vibe. And took them to a Game 7 in overtime.
Exactly. That is just wild. And not to mention, we're talking about a Brooklyn Nets team that went from getting swept in the NBA bubble when you had literally nobody besides Karis LeVert, Jared Allen, and Joe Harris to having the best run in nearly 20 years, literally in Game 7 just to get taken out. Because Rucker Park, Kevin Durant came into play. That gave me that vibe a little bit when I saw him go off for that performance.
If he just would have had a half an inch step behind that 3-point
he would have won. We would have been talking about them, but you know what? The Nets are the
Brooklyn Nets.
The Nets and Lakers are the favorites to win next year, while Milwaukee's only the 3rd favorites. So let's see if they play up to that level of intensity.
Yeah, I think Milwaukee's done. They'll be in the playoffs, but winning championships, nah, I ain't buying that. I'm all stocked up on crazy.
Yeah, that is an actual fact. Okay, now we get to our last topic of the day, the WNBA second half. I mean, well, we don't know how it's going to happen with the goal. We already went over that, but the way that the Aces are playing in the first half of the season, after making it to the finals, and A'ja Wilson being MVP, and we already talked about her Olympic performance, do you see the Seattle Storm Aces duking out in the finals again?
Well, first and foremost, that first week back from the Olympic break is gonna be some sloppy ass basketball. I'm gonna tell you that right now. I'm expecting sloppy basketball. I'm not even expecting a whole lot that first week. Now, after that first week, all right, it'll get back to normal. I can see a collision course between the Storm and the Aces again. I love the rivalry. I think it's great for the league. I think it's great for the game itself. And I do think if the Aces can stay healthy, I do believe they would have had more of an edge if Angel McCoughtry was playing. But this team, as it's currently constructed, I think it's definitely going to go to full 5 games in the WNBA Finals. I can't count out Chicago. I can't count out, Connecticut in the East. But I think they're pretty much they're 4 good teams that can make the WNBA Finals. But I think they're 2 premier teams in the Las Vegas Aces and the Seattle Storm. And I think if the Aces are able to stay healthy, they can get outside of their own heads, meaning Seattle has pretty much been on their back for a long time. And I think you were on the call when we talked about when I asked A'ja, or somebody asked A'ja, I don't know if it was my question or another question, where we were like, hey, what is it like what would you want to do different to beat the Seattle Storm? Because remember, they're in their heads. And I think the Aces were 0-7 before they won that regular season game against the Seattle Storm. So hopefully that helped them mentally, but they've got to beat them in the finals when it counts mentally. I think that's going to be a huge weight lifted off of their shoulders. A'ja Wilson, Liz Cambage, Jackie Young, Chelsea Gray, Kelsey Plum. I think that's going to be a huge weight lifted. And they have the talent it takes to win a WNBA championship. I really do think that. Not just because you and I cover them, but I really see that. I really think this team is a different team this year. I think Liz Cambage is a different player this year. And she's going to be more effective. And she's really coming into her own. And she's got to dominate. Because the one thing Seattle doesn't really have is somebody that can be in that paint. And that's where Liz Cambage comes in. And she can be the Shaq of the situation and dominate.
Exactly. And you know what? I always knew that the Aces were going to be a team worth watching ever since that one game with Gianna Hamby, half-court shot against Chicago Sky in one of the first 2 rounds of the 2019 WNBA playoffs. Oh yeah, and of course the finals appearance. And yeah, I think this team was bound for success. They're going to be bound to win a championship eventually if they keep up this momentum. And now that you got Liz Cambage back after she missed a year due to COVID concerns, she's really playing like the one that dropped 53 on the Liberty.
Yeah, you know what? The Aces are a great ran organization from top to bottom. I mean, you have an owner like Mark Davis who owns the Raiders, who actually believes in his team. You see him showing up to games, encouraging the players. You know, that means a lot. You know what I mean? When you see that, and you have, president, the head coach and Bill Lane Beer, you have a coaching staff, with Sugar Rogers and, everybody like that. I mean, they have a really well-oiled machine in that organization. It translates down to the players. And you see why the players have been successful the way they have because of what happens within the organization. And they really believe in their players. When I went to Vegas, I saw Aces, the Aces were a presence in Vegas. It wasn't just the Raiders. Even though the Raiders, obviously NFL is the number one sport in the country. And the Raiders, Raider Nation is deep out here in these football streets. But you see the Aces have a presence along with the Golden Knights, and you see that. And that's one thing Chelsea Gray talked about. Hey, when I came to Vegas, I saw the Aces had a presence, not just on the court, but in the city. And I think that resonates with the players mentally as far as having the fan base and having people rally around them. I think they definitely feed off of that. And I think that's going to carry them into the playoffs and hopefully into the WNBA finals, and hopefully they capture their first ever WNBA championship.
Yeah, that's assuming that the 5 through 8 teams like the New York Liberty and the Phoenix Mercury don't give them a struggle when they actually meet them there. Because when the Liberty were healthy, they were turning on at the beginning. It was just when they started losing to the Las Vegas Aces and that buzzer beater loss against Courtney Williams. I was at that game, by the way. That's where they started to tumble. And when they couldn't hold a candle to the Las Vegas Aces or the Connecticut Sun or any of the other elite teams, the Kansas Parker when she was Chicago Sky when she finally played, that showed concern that the Liberty have a lot of development to do.
Yeah, I mean, the Chicago Sky, I mean, you respect to Courtney Vandersloot, the rest of the players on that team. But the Chicago Sky is Candace Parker. Mm-hmm. However Candace Parker moves, that's how the Chicago Sky moves. That's been proven. You can say what you want. You can not like what I have to say if you're a Chicago Sky fan. I really don't give a damn. Go look at the records. Go look at the games with the eyeball test. And you tell me when Candace Parker got hurt and she was out of that lineup, what was the record, Rafiq? If you refresh my memory, sir.
They were like without Candace Parker. They were like 1-7 without her. And yeah, when she came back, they were on fire. Mm-hmm. They were on fire, winning the next one. And oh man, Kansas Parker plays. She's a good team leader. She's a good shot blocker.
She's an excellent team leader.
She can pass, and not to mention we got to give her props for that cover magazine for Slam Magazine and being on the cover of NBA 2K22. First one to it.
Representing for the Chi, her hometown, and representing. For a high school legend that many people don't know about. She's definitely, she's a great analyst on Turner. Turner is great to have her, TNT, Turner, NBA TV. She's great at what she's gotten. I've watched the maturation of from the time she got on to where she is now. She is outstanding. And she gives the game such a honest but authentic perspective that it's refreshing to hear somebody speak about the game like that. You learn stuff. And, she's balancing that between, and then she's a single mom. Like, man, what more can you say? Like, she definitely, I mean, the way she's been playing up until the All-Star break, I think you have to definitely be in. I think you definitely have to be in. She has to be in the MVP category or a conversation because of what she's brought to that Chicago Sky team.
Yeah, if you're watching Candace Parker during her Tennessee days, you knew she was, when being coached by Pat Summer, God rest her soul, you knew she was bound for success. In her first season where she was Rookie of the Year and MVP at the same time, leading the Sparks back into the playoffs, having 2 consecutive games with at least 1 dunk, you knew she was bound for success.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you saw what she did in 2008. I mean, she did everything but win a WNBA title. And so when you look at unfortunately, she had a couple of years where she succumbed to injury, but she bounced back. And I think after it was the 2011 season, she really became more of a vocal leader. I think she kind of grew on her own. And 5 years later, she's competing for a WNBA championship and got her first ever WNBA championship. And went on, she competed in 2 WNBA finals. So That goes to show you, and look at the Sparks now. Look at the Sparks after the departure of Candace Parker and Chelsea Gray. Look at how the Sparks are, and that's no disrespect to them. I think Nneka is an incredible player. I think she's a phenomenal player, but you got to get her some help. And right now, she doesn't have a whole lot of help. I know she's been injured and she's been battling back from injury, and hopefully she can come back this season and really get some games in where she can kind of get her start to get her rhythm going, at least to give the fans some type of hope for next season. But if they don't put no help around Nneka Ogwumike, it's just going to be the Nneka Ogwumike show, and then eventually she's going to want out because she's going to be tired of losing, because that's all they're going to be doing is losing. They're not going to compete for any WNBA championship. They're going to be losing. And that's just the reality of it.
And don't forget about Shanae Ogwumike, who literally came back after missing the season last year, and then she came back for a couple of games, wasn't really herself. She got re-injured, and then, of course, this Los Angeles Sparks team. I'll give them credit for the Erica Wheeler we're signing.
Erica Wheeler, she's the truth.
First undrafted player to be an All-Star MVP. And you got Amanda Zawi B, who could literally get you some 3-pointers and block shots from the inside for a big woman. Like, come on.
Hey, man, I can't believe you forgot the name of Tia Cooper. Tia Cooper is just phenomenal. Okay. All right, man. You the same, man. I'm just making sure.
Come on. Like, we don't really see much of Tia Cooper, let's be honest.
Well, Tia Cooper has definitely emerged as a person that people have come to see and gotten to know over the course of the season. And she's definitely taken her popularity to a different level. And when you have, fans coming up, because I used to see fans coming up to her, the girl got her own Barbie doll. I mean, that to me, she's in a Jordan brand. She's with Jordan brand. They're promoting her. So I think she's definitely utilized LA for what LA is known for, which is to accentuate whatever you have and take it to another level away from the basketball court to develop yourself as a brand. And she's definitely done that. And she's a good basketball player too, on top of that. So I think when you look at the overall totality, that's what I'm saying, when it comes to the LA Sparks, you got to put Nneka needs another superstar with her. And then you can build around those two, right? If you build around those two, put another superstar with her, you can have some success. But if you don't, and you just keep, second, third tier players around her, she's not going to accomplish anything. I mean, she'll score buckets, and it'll be like watching Russell Westbrook in OKC without Kevin Durant and crew.
Yeah,
he gets all the individual accolades, but nothing major as far as competing for a championship.
And when I'm looking at the Los Angeles Sparks this season, they've been able to get some wins and they're being competitive, but they just had a tough time getting over the hump in certain games. Like, look at the losses against the Seattle Storm. You could barely compete with them.
Could it be coaching?
That could be a problem. And you're being coached by Derek Fisher, a 5-time NBA champion at that.
Well, let's put it this way. I may walk into a bar and I may be a spokesman for Budweiser, But just because I've been a award-winning uh, spokesman for Budweiser doesn't mean that they're gonna love Budweiser when that's a Coors related, that's a Coors owned bar. In other words, just because you did a great job as a player in the NBA doesn't mean that translates to being a coach in the WNBA and understanding the women's game and really catering to the strengths of the women players on your squad. And to me, I have never been. I mean, I have nothing against Derek Fisher like that. I just never been high on him as a coaching prospect or a coaching hire.
So
I felt like,
so you think? Look at how he coached the New York Knicks.
and he was terrible at that. He was terrible. Like, let's be honest, he was terrible with the Knicks, and he's doing a lot of stuff, behind the scenes that later came out that contributed to it as well. But on the floor, he was terrible as a head coach with the Knicks. And then you go to the WNBA and you basically alienate one of your premier superstars. Come on, you tell me. Is this a guy that you want to lead your franchise? And then you give him the GM title? A year after having the head coach title, you give him the GM title?
I mean, I get because of his success that he
Come
had
on.
while playing for Los Angeles Lakers and of course playing alongside the late Kobe Bryant. I get it, but you can do much better than that when it comes to his coaching standpoint, Derek Fisher. I'm sorry.
Man, you could have hired Lisa Leslie. You could have hired Tina Thompson. You could have hired Don Staley.
Exactly.
There are so many other coaches that you could have hired. Look what Lisa Leslie's doing in the Big Three.
Exactly.
Look,
Nah, come on, man. I'm glad you brought that up. Lisa Leslie literally made Joe Johnson, and from a coaching standpoint, a lot better than he even was in the NBA.
that's coaching. Look at what Tina Thompson's doing in the collegiate ranks. Look at what Don Staley's doing in the collegiate ranks. Look what she's doing with Team USA. We just got through talking about it right now. You mean to tell me you couldn't have hired one of those three ladies that we just got through talking about to lead your franchise? Hell, we probably would have had Candace Parker still in LA. We probably would have started Chelsea Gray in LA.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. But you go add insult to injury. That's why I was never in agreement with them adding the GM title, because who are the players supposed to go to if they have a problem with the coach?
That is an actual fact. I mean, yeah, the Sparks, they got a lot to figure out. I mean, they're not that far from making it to the playoffs, but they got a lot to figure out if they can't at least gain some ground. And they're going to be back at the Staples Center to start the second half, so it should be pretty interesting.
5 home games.
Only 5 home games. Yeah.
5 home games remaining at Staples Center.
Yeah, good luck at Los Angeles Sparks and trying to turn things around after starting off kind of so-so.
And in one of those games against the Seattle Storm. Anyway, I digress.
Yeah.
And PR might get mad at me. Let me stop talking about the Sparks like that. PR might get mad at me.
Yeah, I know. Not to mention, yeah, we already went over that the loss against New York Liberty in honor of the 97 game. 1-2 OG franchise.
Yeah, that part.
And now concludes this episode of Nothing But That Sports Talk. Thank you for stopping by, Nick Hamilton. I really love the fact that you stopped by on the show in just long-term notice. But you know what? I look forward to continue talking sports with you in later episodes going forward.
Hey, man, Rafiq, man, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Catch me at nightcastmedia.com and on Instagram at Nick Hamilton LA and on Twitter at Nick Hamilton 213.
And to all the ballers out there, get you in the game and enjoy the rest of the Olympics and the WNBA season when it comes back.